People were recently allowed back into their homes to assess the damage from Monday night's deadly fire in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. There are so many people just completely and understandably overwhelmed with emotion because they were coming back to unrecognizable piles of rubble that looked like this. Officials are calling this the worst wildfire disaster in Tennessee in a century. Now, keep in mind, there are still 50 people missing, and sadly, it sounds like the death toll is going to rise, and they are still trying to restore power to thousands of people. Fires, as we know, like many natural disasters, they're just so complicated, and there are things that just cannot be explained. You'll see structures that are destroyed, and then you look next door and you'll have a structure that's completely untouched. And just like in many storms that we've covered over the years, you'll sometimes see objects of symbolism like this that survive. In this case, a Jesus statue covered in soot, the only thing standing in the midst of a burnt down house in Sevier County. There was actually another Jesus statue that survived through the fire. Many people have said that these statues are giving them hope at a time when it is, of course, needed so badly.
Well, it's been a rocky start to summer. Queensland's copped severe storms and there's a heat wave on the way. And
the thunderstorm asthma is still causing problems in Melbourne. Let's bring in Sunrise correspondent Nathan Templeton and 7 News coastal expert Paul Burt. Paul, to the Gold Coast first. What impact is this heat wave going to have on Queensland?
Oh, look, at the moment there, I could say, Sam, it's going to be an absolute heavy impact, particularly for the first 5 or 6 days of summer. At the moment, beautiful blue skies here off the Gold Coast, but pretty much this time last night we were impacted by a fairly heavy storm which made its way up the ranges towards Brisbane and then the Sunshine Coast. Of course, what we're seeing will be a heat wave of up to 36 degrees along the coastal areas and in the city for Brisbane tomorrow, obviously rising up to around 40 degrees towards Ipswich and then 45 degrees in the central parts of the state. And that's where all that heat is coming from, as that lower air mass out there is going to just drive up that earth temperature. We're going to see it then pushing towards the coast. A trough system will intensify some winds over the weekend, particularly northerly. So with that, obviously, up comes the mercury. But then by about Monday, Tuesday, another trough will move closer to the coast. It's still very warm temperatures, but what we will see is a few showers, possibly up to 10 millimetres of rain. So fingers crossed that occurs, but it'll be a very muggy day for the first 5 or 6 days of summer.
Yeah. Nathan, what's being done to prepare for another asthma storm? Because the effects are still hanging around in Melbourne, aren't they?
Yes, they are, Koshy. The main focus here is just creating awareness about it, because until last week, I dare say 99% of Australians had never heard of thunderstorm asthma, and the scary part is that people who weren't previously considered asthmatics were affected by that freak weather event. Now, there were storms forecast here last night, and so warnings were put in place. Thankfully, though, no new cases have been reported, but with summer now here, everyone is on guard. The main advice is to make sure to have Ventolin with them at all times. You can get caught out by a sudden change in the weather. And also, if someone is affected, family and friends should consider driving them to hospital themselves rather than waiting for an ambulance, because 8,500 people needed treatment last week and there simply weren't enough ambulances. Sadly, 8 people have died and 9th is in intensive care, and hopefully some lessons have been learnt.
More looming questions this morning surrounding the water in Pinal County. Is tap water from Johnson Utilities safe to drink? The company says yes. The government agency that regulates them, though, isn't so sure about that. Tests done by the Department of Environmental Quality found unsafe levels of nitrates in water from Johnson Utilities. However, the company put a notice on its website insisting the water is safe and claiming the tests were faulty. Jasmine Lara is pregnant and also the mom of a 6-year-old. She worries her family could have already been exposed.
I just started thinking, well, my son took a shower, I took a shower, what if it got in our mouths? Or I cooked rice, like I cooked dinner with it. I washed dishes.
Now, high levels of nitrates, this is a very serious problem for babies, especially those younger than 6 months. They can get sick and tragically even die. Pregnant women are also at risk. Boiling the water, we're told, won't help.
Developing tonight, a free speech case out of Arizona filed back in May, back in the spotlight tonight. A pair of Christian business owners are part of a group challenging a local ordinance in Phoenix. The law in place requires them to do business for same-sex wedding ceremonies. Joanna Duca and Brianna Koski are the co-owners of Brush and Nib Studio, where they create custom wedding invitations. And they say the law represents a clear violation of their First Amendment rights. The vice mayor of Phoenix, however, is standing by the law as necessary to keep businesses in that area.
You've seen companies such as PayPal lead communities that don't stand up for all of their residents. Major events like the Final Four will not come to communities that discriminate. So this ordinance is an important economic development tool, and we will defend it.
Kristen Wagner is Senior Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, which represents the business owners, and joins us now live. Kristen, I want to start out. I know this has gone to the trial level and they lost there. I want to read a bit of what the judge said. The purpose of a wedding invitation is simply to convey the details of the date, time, and place of the wedding and to identify the persons getting married. Judge Mullins went on to say that, listen, they're not endorsing this ceremony. They're simply crafting something that would tell people where to go for the wedding. What your response?
This case involves artistic expression. The issue here is whether the government can force artists to create art in violation of their convictions. And this ordinance actually imposes jail time potentially on artists, as well as fines. 6 months in jail for every day that Joanna and Brianna are not in compliance. We don't force artists to create artistic expression under threat of jail time.
Yeah, something interesting as well. It says that as part of the ordinance that they can't directly or indirectly display, circulate, publicize, or mail any advertisement, notice, or communication which states or implies that any facility or service will be refused or restricted. So essentially now why you're here and not your clients is because they're worried that this ordinance says if they speak out about why they would refuse service or refuse to take part in this, that they too would be facing jail time for sharing their convictions and opinions?
Right. That's exactly what the law says, is that if they in any way, directly or indirectly, suggest that they may have beliefs that are based on marriage between one man and one woman, then they can face the 6 months in jail for every single day they're in compliance. It's an extreme penalty. Our clients would love to be here to talk about their beliefs and their art.
Okay, now I got to reference back to a case in New Mexico, because I went back and read this the other night. This involves Christian photographers who, again, declined to take part in a same-sex ceremony. And one of the concurring judges in that opinion said, basically, get over it. It is the price of citizenship. If you want to be in the commerce stream, if you want to be a business, that's the price of citizenship, and you're going to have to do it.
Americans don't give up their constitutional rights because they want to earn a living and feed their children, nor do artists. The suggestion that you would not be able to create art and sell it and be protected under the First Amendment is not supported by the Supreme Court precedent, and the First Amendment protects this kind of expression.
How do you feel about the appeal? Because I know that's where you go next. Are you confident that another judge may see this differently?
We are confident that another judge will see it differently. There are hundreds of years of precedent on our side in this case. And again, we go back to the basic principle. Free speech is a bedrock principle in the First Amendment. This law can just as easily, or laws similar to it, force a Democratic speechwriter to have to write for a Republican. It could force an atheist singer to have to sing at an Easter worship service. And we know that civil liberties travel together. So if we're allowing a bedrock principle of the First Amendment to be compromised, then we know that other civil liberties are sure to follow.
All right, well, keep us up to date on the case, and we would love to talk to the artist at whatever point that becomes possible, but we'll keep tracking the case. Kristen, thank you very much.
Now, hundreds of Austrians marched through the streets of the capital, Vienna, to protest against far-right presidential candidate Oberhofer, head of Austria's presidential runoff vote slated for Sunday.
We think he's a Nazi because he's a German fraternity. He still wears the cornflower. He is very racist. He is also not just racist, but also against the rights of women. And basically, I think he's a danger for our country.
Protesters accused Hofer of representing a new fascism and dictatorship. Crowd also expressed anger over Hofer's anti-refugee policies. There's a heavy police presence in the area where the rally is being held. Austrians will return to the polls on Sunday in a bitterly fought marathon election. Leader of the Freedom Party, Oberhofer, could become the first far-right leader to be elected in Europe since the Second World War. Now, Hofer's rival is former Greens leader Alexander Van der Bellen, with the most recent opinion polls showing the race is still too close to call.
The Europol report says ISIL remains the biggest security threat to Europe. The agency says that European nationals fighting with ISIL will be returning to Europe, and several dozen may be back already. In the past year, terrorists declaring allegiance to ISIL have devastated France and Belgium. But Europol warns that other EU member states, part of the US-led coalition against ISIL, could be targeted as well. More ISIL losses in Iraq and Syria could furthermore spur more fighters to return, and the attacks could be even more brutal. Europol says that the group could escalate damage by resorting to car bombs and kidnappings. Europol's director Rob Wainwright added that it's paramount for police and security services across Europe to work together in a joint effort to reduce the threat posed by ISIL. Mariam Zaidi, CCTV, Brussels.
We're going to start here with the angry reaction this morning after the latest twist in the case of former NFL player Joe McKnight. We want you to look at this flood of tweets from people in the pro football community. McKnight was shot and killed in an apparent road rage incident in Louisiana, and the next day the police decided to release the shooter. They have not charged him. We're now learning that the same man was involved in yet another road rage incident in the same location. ABC's Eva Pilgrim is in Gretna, Louisiana for us this morning. Hi, Eva.
Good morning. 10 years ago, according to court documents, Ronald Glasser was accused of beating up a man at this gas station in an apparent road rage incident. Then this week, at this stoplight, he admits to shooting a man.
This morning, new details about the man who police say admits to shooting a former NFL running back during what authorities are calling a road rage incident.
We definitely need answers.
Why was he released?
They have usurped and corrupted the criminal justice system.
Investigators say Ronald Gasser, seen here in cuffs, shot 28-year-old Joe McKnight 3 times. The Jefferson Parish coroner telling ABC News the former USC standout who played for the Jets was hit in the hand, shoulder, and chest.
Mr. Gasser admitted to shooting Joe McKnight Jr.
McKnight's family and supporters in the community outraged his killer was released from custody and has not been charged.
I want answers. I want the truth to come out. It's not a white or black thing, it's a right or wrong thing.
According to records released by the Sheriff's Department overnight, Gasser was arrested for a violent fight during a road rage incident in 2006 at a gas station at the same intersection where he allegedly shot and killed McKnight. Charges from the 2006 incident were later dropped. On Thursday, investigators say witnesses reported seeing the two men arguing. The sheriff telling ABC News McKnight was not armed when Gasser fired those shots from his car.
Mr. Gasser did not stand over Mr. McKnight and fire shots into him.
Still, the sheriff says charging Gasser before a thorough investigation is completed would be a rush to judgment. McKnight's family overcome with emotion.
It was like I lost a friend, I lost my everything.
The sheriff saying this case is very personal for his department. The man who raised McKnight was a sheriff's deputy. Paula.
All right, Eva, I'll pick it up from here. Thank you so much. We want to bring in ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, a former FBI special agent. Brad, thanks for joining us. And people, understandably, right now are outraged. There's no denying that Ronald Gasser killed Joe McKnight. So why would Gasser be released and not charged?
Because under Louisiana law, looking at justifiable homicide, if you are in your vehicle and someone attempts to enter it, now we don't know that fact, but I'm going to presume that for a second, that Mr. McKnight tried to get into Mr. Gasser's vehicle, he's justified in shooting him. And the sheriff basically alluded to that yesterday in a press conference, that justifiable homicide may play into effect in this case.
Yeah, law enforcement said there's no video of the incident and Gasser was not standing over McKnight when he was shot. But I want to ask you about Gasser's prior record. As you heard in the piece, he was arrested in 2006, another road rage incident in nearly the identical location. Is this going to factor into this investigation, Brad?
It will not factor into the investigation of this particular situation, Paula, and I'll tell you why. I've worked a lot of murders, and what happens is a person may have been charged with murder in the past or a suspect, but you have to look what's in front of you, and I think that's what the sheriff's trying to do. If he is charged, it becomes more relevant once you get in court.
All right, Sheriff promising a deliberate and a thorough investigation. Brad, thanks for your insight as usual.
In a science classroom in Utah this week, more than 24 kids were trapped by a classmate armed with 2 guns. That's where the story takes a surprising turn. Here's Carter Evans.
Student with a gun at Miller Park Junior High in Bountiful.
This time it was a 9th grader armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, a 9mm pistol, and boxes of ammunition. A teacher called 911.
He has a gun. He has a gun.
But this time, the outcome was so much different.
Where's the student now with the gun? Yes, his parents have him and both the loaded guns. Parents have the student? Yes.
The parents ran to the room, entered the room, were able to grab hold of the firearms.
Chief Tom Ross says the gunman's parents noticed he was behaving oddly at home that morning. When they found 2 guns missing from their safe, they headed straight to school.
And when they were just a short distance away, actually heard a gunshot fired.
26 students were in the classroom when the teen fired the shotgun into the ceiling. Dan Fowers was watching.
I heard a gun cock, and then I looked up. I saw the shot go off. Everyone got under a desk, and I saw some people crying.
Students reunited with their parents outside. Dan's mom, Kristen, says they're lucky.
I am so grateful to those parents. I am so grateful that they were, paying attention because the outcome could have been so much worse.
The gunman's parents still haven't spoken publicly. Scott, right now their 15-year-old son is at a Utah juvenile detention facility on weapons charges.
Carter Evans in our LA newsroom. Carter, thank you.
The main organizing group of Sunday's planned celebration of the American flag outside of Hampshire College in Amherst has canceled the event. Amherst VFW commander and Veterans Advocacy Services Vice President Victor Nunez-Ortiz told 22 News they are grateful to Hampshire College for deciding to raise the flag, and they're planning to move forward without any further demonstrating. This is video of their protest that was held last weekend when the flag was still down. As recently as Friday, the VFW said they would hold that protest, but they were planning more of a celebration of the red, white, and blue. But 22 News got word at 1:30 this afternoon that the group headed by Nunez-Ortiz said they're canceling the event as an act of faith. Ortiz told 22 News, quote, "In light of all that is happening in our country, there are other areas that need our attention where the flag is being disrespected and mistreated."